Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. We will call today's council meeting to order. This is the public council meeting for November 27th. In front of you, council, I believe you all have at least a digital copy of today's agenda. I'm going to entertain a motion to accept the agenda as presented. It is moved by Councillor Soil, seconded by Councillor Ledwell. Are there any other additions to the agenda not yet referenced here? I have one, which is a piece of correspondence from Minister Charlene Johnson, the minister responsible for the status of women. Anybody else have anything they wish to add to today's agenda? Hearing none, we'll call it. All those in favor? Contrary minded. Go to the agenda then. The first item today will be the minutes and action report. Again, this is from our meeting of November the 13th, and we will entertain a motion to accept the minutes as presented. Moved by Councillor Walsh, seconded by Deputy Mayor. Are there any errors or omissions? This is, again, the minutes of the meeting of November 13th. Any errors or omissions? Going once? Going twice? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Business arising from the minutes of November the 13th. Anybody? Any business arising not slated to be referenced elsewhere in the meeting? Going once? Going twice? Okay, hearing none, we will move along. Council, the next item, proclamations and presentations. We have none today. There is, though, and most of you will see on the desk in front of you, most of you have a ribbon, and you also have a pin. This was sent to us by the minister responsible for the status of women, the Honourable Charlene Johnson. She wrote a letter to us today, which I will have circulated to all of council. And this is in reference to the Purple Ribbon Campaign, which is the campaign to prevent violence against women. The actual running dates for this campaign this year are November 25th through to December the 10th. The minister writes to us and advises that each year during the overwhelmingly successful campaign, purple ribbon lapel pins and magnets are distributed province-wide. And with each of these items, it is hoped that the message about the seriousness of the issue of violence against women is reaching all corners of Newfoundland and Labrador. She is obviously inviting us to join her in both wearing the purple ribbon in a lapel and also to display the ribbon, if you would, for the next couple of weeks on your automobile. She makes reference to the fact that this campaign was started back in 2009. It was primarily an advertising, a television and print campaign, and since then she notes to have seen a significant positive change in public attitude towards violence, but despite this progress, continued work is needed to address the issue of violence against women in our province. There is no one here today to actually address this with it, but I do want it noted in the minutes and on the record that we have addressed and tabled the letter. Everybody has accepted the purple ribbon, and certainly to let the minister know and all those know who are engaged that the City of Mount Pearl totally supports this campaign. I think it's fair to say 125% or more. We absolutely endorse the initiatives and the goals outlined by the annual Purple Ribbon Campaign, and Mount Pearl is delighted to declare itself a partner in that initiative. Anyone with a comment or a question of any kind as it relates to that? Councillor Tessier, if you would.
Just as I said to you before the meeting, Your Worship, it's just a shame that we have to highlight an issue like this, to highlight and create awareness about respect for women and equality for women, and certainly taking action against violence against women. It is a shame. I look forward to a day when this campaign will be no longer necessary. That would be
hopefully one day the goal. Absolutely. Thank you. Hearing no other comment, Council, we will move to committee reports, and with the leave of Council, given that we do have an audience of some today. Hi, folks. Glad to see you here. We rarely get an audience, you know. We usually do this thing. We usually do this thing and struggle on just all by ourselves most days. But we know that there's one particular issue that is of interest to all of you. The Chair, Council of Planning, came to me just before the meeting and asked if, just so we could allow you not to have to suffer the boredom of 5 or 6 committee reports before we got to planning in this issue, so that there would be no need for you to have to hang on. I'm going to ask for the leave of Council to allow us to vary the agenda, and we will call for the Planning and Land Use Development Committee report first. If Council is okay with that? Everybody good with that? That being the case, Councillor Aker, if you would, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I too would like to acknowledge the residents who've come out really on two issues tonight. Some of them are here, I think most of them on the 166 Park Avenue issue. That's the proposed condo development on the old Park Avenue school site, as well as the issue on Fleet Street with regards to the proposed daycare. And I want to thank everybody for coming out, and also I recognize most of the faces because you've been involved with the process as we've gone through this. And our journey is not over tonight, but we do appreciate your input and your involvement. Council, I'd like to table a motion, and I'll talk about the motion separately. We have a proposal to enable a 2 3-story apartment buildings with 24 units in each building on the former Park Avenue school site, which is owned by originally owned by the Eastern School District, and basically is being purchased by Carwood Development. On the face of this, the city for years, even before my time, I've heard commentary that we would like to see this site developed. It's an open field. It was a former school site. I think it was vacated approximately 10 years ago. And the question before us tonight really is whether the proposal is a good fit from a property perspective, the neighborhood, or from the city's perspective. And if that's the case in that lens, is it the best alternative use for this particular site? The process involved 3 feedback sessions, including 2 open houses, one that the developer did initially, and another that we did at the end to talk more about the detail of the project. We also held a briefing session in the middle of the process. I think we had about 30 or 40 residents come out, and we do appreciate their input. This, if it goes through, for this to go through, will require changes to our municipal plan. Currently, the area is designated institutional. It requires us to change it to residential, and then further, it requires changing in the city zoning from community and public service to apartment. And this changes to our municipal plan as well as the zoning. This reflects the fact that it was formerly a school site, and now the request from Carwood basically is to put up apartment building. I'd like to take just a minute to go through some of the feedback that we received. And typically for issues like this, the feedback tends to be negative. People don't really come out to briefing sessions and say, this is a great idea, let's do it. And we understand that, I get that, and typically we have to deal with the commentary coming back. But I got to be honest with you, a lot of it was constructive from the residents. It wasn't a case, I don't believe, of NIMBY. It wasn't a case of being negative for the sake of being negative. Let's talk about the property for a second. Coming out of the briefing session in the open house, one of the issues we had was there was not enough detail, because the developer had initially given us a concept plan, both at the original open house as well as our briefing session. So to that end, we went back and we had, down at Park Place, we had another open house. I believe the members of the committee were there. I know the deputy mayor was, and maybe other members of council, as well as as many of the residents again. So we took care of that issue. Another issue is that this is too dense for the existing lot size. I would argue that the site was formerly a school. There are nearby commercial buildings, nearby apartment buildings. It's a fairly dense neighborhood to begin with. And this neighborhood typically has seen a lot of conflicting uses over the years. This is where the original industrial park of Mount Pearl sat, next to the railway siding down there. It's a combination of lawyers' offices, daycares, former school site, warehouses, businesses down there. And the view of the committee was we didn't think that this particular proposal is really too dense for the site. Another bit of feedback, and very constructive again, was the existing storm and sanitary sewers may not be able to handle the 48 units. And to this end, because we heard some feedback about the sanitary sewer every now and then in periods of high rain, it seemed like it was surging. And to that end, the city has recently, through the Engineering Services Committee, committed budget funds from this calendar year to review the current sanitary system together with future requirements. I believe the focus, I see the director nodding in approval, the emphasis will be on the Park Avenue area, between, say, Park Avenue and the lower part of Mount Pearl, not the rest of the city, right? You know. And again, to reiterate, we've allocated 2012 budget funds for that. One of the concerns was about the fact that the apartment building could be for rental units. And there is no doubt that when you have a rental unit, sometimes without an owner-occupier, they typically don't get maintained. They don't look as nice. They don't get maintained with the same pride as people who own their own houses. These will be condos. These will be marketed to seniors, and we expect that the upkeep will be better than you'd expect from a rental property. Another bit of feedback we got pertaining to the property was there was easements in place which may limit the development of the site. But we, through the planning department staff, have checked that the building location and the site plan reflects all of the existing easements. There is no impact. The building footprint that's proposed, the two building footprints, there is no impact on any easements required for the utilities in the neighborhood. And in no way would we prejudice any easement for the benefit of another resident, right? So there'd be no secondary impact there. My view, and I think the view of the committee, was that this is a good property for the site. From a neighborhood perspective, again, takeaways from the briefing session and the open houses, or the open house, it would take away the peaceful character of the neighborhood. And I guess when I'm being told that 48 units are going to move next door to me, that's probably my first inclination. But then we thought about it. These condos are being marketed to seniors, and typically that demographic sector, if there's ever one out there, they're the ones that typically keep the peace. We don't think the 48 units is going to be that, is going to take away the peaceful character of the neighborhood. Now, if they're being marketed to other types of demographic ages, maybe that might not be the case. But and some of the counter argument is that, well, how do you know they're going to be lived in by seniors over the life of the project? You don't know, but you do know with the demographic change that's occurring in the city and the fact that the developer is marketing the condos to seniors, for the next decade or two, you're going to see senior citizens living in there, and they're fairly peaceful. Another bit of feedback we got was the nearby apartment building, which is at the bottom. I think it's on the corner, near the corner of Winston and Riverview, has had flooding issues. But this is not the result of any deficiencies in city infrastructure. That's a historical problem. We've had no complaints from the owners or the residents of that apartment building, and this development will not impact that at all. We cannot expect this developer to fix the flooding problems of a neighbor. Right? Now, that may get fixed down the road, but we will make sure that this new development does not prejudice or change in any way the flooding, the existing flooding issues that are down there in that apartment building. The next feedback piece we got was that the proposed height is too high, and I think this really was the issue that struck home for me. And this is the main issue we received, like I said, in the briefing session. The issue is the developer needs the height in order to make the sale of the apartments viable. The developer deserves to get a good rate of return and also has to keep the price of the condos down to a sufficient level that they become marketable. So without the height, this development cannot proceed, and we cannot increase the housing stock in the city. And in terms of the height, it's similar to heights in the nearby buildings. We'll see 2 stories from Park Avenue, which you typically already see there. You see that in I think the lawyers' offices that are just west of that site. It blends very well into the hill, so when you're down on Riverview, it's not going to look like a great big monster, right? And shading studies done by the developer show that the impact is minimal on the neighbors. They'll still have all the sunlight. In fact, one of the changes that occurred between the briefing session we had and the final open house was a relocation of the building. I think they pushed it west so they could avoid any further shading issues. Property values, this is always a debate. People assume that property values are going to go down. Nobody knows what the future holds, but generally speaking, if you build something brand new with a big investment like this at $10 to $15 million, typically it brings housing prices up. It rarely drops the prices. The other issue we heard about was it may create further conflict with commercial traffic on Riverview. There will be 48 owner-occupiers of these units. The traffic they generate will be very consistent throughout the day. They're not commuters. They're not going to work in the morning. They're not coming home at supper time. The impact of 48 cars should be minimal. Now, there is a bit of an issue on Park Avenue, and I was talking to a couple of the residents just before our council meeting. The issue really is with Park Avenue. I think the traffic that's on Park Avenue and the speeds that you see there is getting higher and higher. I don't think this particular development is going to contribute to that or make that any worse. But I'd like, with the leave of council, and it's not included in the motion, but maybe the Engineering Services Committee or Community Services could look at, the new sign we just put on Mount Carson. Yes. Maybe in the area, that straight stretch that runs from, say, First United Church right down to say, the top of Winston Avenue, maybe one of those signs, it might be a good idea to place it there, because the residents did give us feedback in the sessions that are saying that the speed and traffic on Park Avenue is getting worse. I think that's from the growth in the city. I think that's from people trying to find an alternative way as opposed to going up Commonwealth Avenue and Mount Carson, Tops Road. They're looking for alternative ways, thereby increasing the traffic. In our view, at committee level, this proposal from the property level is not inconsistent with the larger buildings nearby. We have warehouses, we have an apartment building at the bottom of Winston and Riverview, we have a commercial building to the west of the site, and it was a school site in the past. I think it's a vast improvement over a very unkept field. You can see it up here, and even in my short time on council, we've had complaints from people living in the neighborhood about the eyesore that runs from Park Avenue down to Riverview. I think also it would set a great example for future development in the area. The motion, Your Worship and Council, is approval to change the municipal plan designation to residential, to change the zoning to apartment, to schedule a public hearing for December 17th, to consider the municipal amendment, appoint Mr. Ernest Boone as commissioner for the hearing, approve a design charrette for the Riverview and Winston Avenue neighborhood for early 2013, and to approve a sanitary and storm sewer review for the old areas of Mount Pearl. And I so move.
Moved, seconded by Councillor Lidwell. Questions or comments? Anybody? Anybody? Deputy Mayor?
Just call on Councillor Acre. You mentioned charrette for the benefit of the public and those in attendance. Maybe you could explain with a little detail as to what that entails.
I'm actually trying to find it here.
Yeah,
Carry
that's
on.
a very good question. It's an area that I've only, since I got on council, became familiar with. It's a design charrette is what it's called. And basically it organizes people living in the neighborhood, including the businesses. It organizes them with a group of planners and architects. And what it tries to do is develop consensus in terms of where this neighborhood should go. I think the concern, my takeaway from committee of the whole meetings, is that we would like to see something done, not just about this site we're talking about here tonight, but the older commercial zone, which typically contains conflicting uses relative to our residential uses that we are either proposing or have in place. So the design charrette is try to build a consensus amongst the building owners as to where the neighborhood should go. From my perspective, Deputy Mayor, it's about being proactive with the redevelopment as opposed to reactive like we are now.
So it's not piecemeal.
It's not piecemeal.
Deputy Mayor and then the city planner.
Oh, sorry. Did you want to go first?
You want to go first, Mr. Yevchek?
Your Worship, just to clarify the concept of a charrette, what the charrette would do is actually bring the neighborhood, including the residents, the residential property owners, commercial property owners, in a kind of a one-day forum where you will have design professionals, very much as Councilor Acre was saying. You would have architects, engineers, maybe property appraisers. And really, the design chart is not just dealing with the one site. What was coming out of the briefing session and the open house is a whole series of neighborhood issues. And the design chart, the plan amendment only deals with the property itself. But the design chart looks at the greater neighborhood issues. And there's issues, and as Councillor Acre has mentioned, there's issues to do with traffic, to do with sidewalks, to do with land use relationships, not only this property but other properties. So the design charrette would be put together to get input from the neighborhood, prepare some kind of ideas on how things can go forward, and create a more sustainable neighborhood in that area. And this is something that's been used in a number of areas actually here in this region to address those kind of neighborhood issues. So I just want to clarify that for Council.
Okay, Deputy Mayor and then Councillor Tessier.
Thank you, Your Worship. And there was one other issue, Councillor Acre, that did come up at our meeting, and that several residents mentioned about the potential hazard coming off Winston. They said when you're coming up Winston Avenue, it was sort of a blind turn there, a blind corner. And I know it's not directly related to the amendments that we're looking for here tonight, but for any development in that area, that was a concern. And we even mentioned at the time that perhaps we could direct traffic westward, so they came out of Riverview Avenue up by where the daycare and that is located. So that was an issue that was raised. In terms of of the other issues that you touched on, the shadows, that was a concern for me, and I heard when the folks were down there, but they mentioned about the concern they were going to lose their sun, and they were going to have these monstrosities next to them, and they would lose their views and that. But the developer, again, went back, took that into consideration, and the software and the pictures and images that he produced for me to look at, and as Councillor Aker mentioned, they relocated their buildings, and the way the software works, it gives the shadow at different times of the year, in March and June, December, and wintertime. And the shadows, according to this software, I mean, the houses were minimally impacted. And the developer again went on and offered to buy houses for areas or houses in the area that may have been negatively impacted. So the developer seems to be very cooperative and sensitive to the needs of the residents there. Another point as well, speaking with a lady, and I forget, she was with the Homeless and Housing Network, Kim Yetman Dawson, and she made an interesting point at the last session we had, that any new housing units, Your Worship, in the city of Mount Pearl are beneficial, because you're going to have residents move out of their existing houses into these new condos, condo living, and she made mention that this opens up units, housing units, at the lower price range, because in a lot of the cases, many of the seniors that will sell their houses, they're not the brand new houses going for the top dollar, and that allows younger families, people entering the housing market, to do so at an affordable rate. So her comment was that any additional housing units to the city is a good thing. And of course, in our strategic plan, and we did a planning session in terms of looking into the future. We mentioned and we emphasized the intensification. We have limited land area to go outward anymore. So now we're looking at intensifying and going up. I think the limit is 6 stories under our new our planning and development regulations and zoning. This is 3 stories. And again, when you get down there and look at the layout of the land and the height of the buildings that are being proposed, I don't think they're going to stick out as much as some may think. And again, it's NIMBY, not in my backyard a situation. I can understand. I think for 10 years now, this has been a vacant lot. Prior to that, it was a school. So, any change that comes in, of course, for the residents or the neighboring properties down there, is going to be a change that they're going to have to deal with. I think it's going to be a beautiful building. The concept designs that I saw, the fact that it's marketed to seniors, if we can address, as we have committed to look at the underground infrastructure, water and sewer, I think it's a great idea about the traffic calmer, that new piece of technology that we're using up on Mount Carson right now, just to alert people to their speeds. I think it's a great addition to the city and any new housing that it may bring, and I'm in full support of this motion. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Tessier?
My parents-in-law actually live in a condo in Mount Pearl, and I think we've seen in any seniors condo developments in Mount Pearl, the properties are very well kept. In fact, if anything's let slide, the condo board knows very, very quickly that there are repairs that are required. I just wanted to speak in terms of the speeding that was referenced on Park Avenue. Municipal enforcement falls under, of course, the purview of community services. Speed, unfortunately, speeding traffic has become a problem in all areas of the city. And everybody, of course, is most concerned with their own neighborhoods because it is their neighborhoods. It is unfortunately a concern in all areas of the city and all areas of the region. We hear people talking about it all the time, not just from Mount Pearl, from St. John's, and certainly the outskirts as well. We, with this new traffic calming system, we have over the past couple of years been taking measures to try and curb the speeding. We have the traffic calmer that we've had now for a couple of years. We have 2 of those. Now we have these new solar-powered traffic speed indicators as well that are in effect. Those are new technology. And just this week, I actually got an email from somebody with 3M talking about something else that they have that is intended to slow traffic down. So if this development proceeds and once it does, if we determine that the speed issues on Park Avenue have gotten worse, then that's definitely something that municipal enforcement, and again in conjunction with our great relationship with the RNC, will certainly tackle head on, as we would in any part of the city of Mount Pearl.
Thank you. Councillor Lidwell?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to look at this, I guess, from a lens when we talk about, community focus and a neighbourhood focus down there. I think from attending all of the various opportunities for feedback that we had, be it the open house or be it the briefing session, there were some concerns from the residents in the area about traffic, some concerns, as has been referenced, about the water and sewer infrastructure that's down there. And certainly, I'm glad that as a council and as a city, we're looking at it from that standpoint. I mean, certainly Councillor Aker, gave a good rundown of the different issues, the different merits of the project itself. And in seconding the motion this evening, I'm certainly expressing that I'm in full support of the development. But I'm also in support of the fact that we're looking at this from the community focus. As the Chair of Engineering, I'm very happy to be able to say that, yes, we are committing to doing a review of the water and sewer infrastructure down in the area on Park Avenue and on Riverview. So certainly, we're going to try our best to alleviate some of those concerns that some of the residents have about that situation. And certainly, as the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Tessier have addressed already, some of the traffic concerns, be they with speeding or perhaps hidden intersections in that area, certainly happy to see that we're going to be addressing those issues as well. And because those issues are included in this motion and because of the overall merits of the project, I'm certainly happy to second it and express my support for it.
Thank you. Councillor Stoyles, then Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Your Worship. Certainly want to view or voice my concerns on this project. I've been around a long time. I can remember when our depot was down in that area, and I remember when the school was open and when the school closed in that area, and the number of complaints that we dealt with here in this chamber with vandalism and, I believe one time it was young people tenting out down there, and a lot of problems down in that area, a lot of problems with businesses down there, and car wrecks, and a number of issues down in that neighborhood. And of course, if this is approved and goes through this evening, and construction for the next 2 years is going to be ongoing down there, and certainly going to impact the neighborhood for the next couple of years. But I think after the project is done and completed, I think the people in the neighborhood will be happy with what's there, especially when you look at seniors moving in. Seniors take pride in where they live, and they're involved in, we have more seniors involved in our seniors program here in Mount Pearl than any other community around the province. I mean, we have almost 600 seniors involved in our program down at Park Place. When they move in, they will take ownership of their own place and take pride into it. But no doubt, over the next couple of years, that neighbourhood is going to be what we would call up in arms. It's like when we did Park Avenue, it took almost 3 years to get the street done down there, and we were constantly apologizing to residents. So I fully support this project. I mean, it was vacant for 10 or 12 years. It's been an eyesore down there in the neighborhood, and I think we got to look at doing just it and looking at what else we can do to make that neighborhood better, because I think there's a lot more we can do down there in that neighborhood.
Thank you. Councillor Walsh.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I first of all want to begin by commending the Planning Department for the level of scrutiny and review that this, and public consultation, quite frankly, that this project has been given. I furthermore believe that based on all the information and the input that we received, including the valuable input that we received from residents, and that is the most important information. That's why we do public consultation at all. I believe that this definitely merits further review and bringing it to another level. And really, that's what we're recommending this evening. That we have an opportunity, as our director says, to have a more in-depth discussion about some of the issues and concerns. There's no doubt that this project seems to have the support of council, but we as members of council, and I think Councillor Stoyles alluded to that as well, we have a tremendous responsibility to ensure that we address any of the issues or concerns, not just related to this development, but issues and concerns in general with the neighborhood. And I believe further to that, to try to mitigate whatever concerns and issues we can as part of this overall development. So I believe, based on the resounding feedback that we've been receiving for the last several years, we need to do two things. We need to definitely, and it was underscored a couple of weekends ago in a very lengthy article in the Telegram, underscoring the need for affordable housing. Some people just can't afford to find good and this would be brand new residential housing for what we refer to as an affordable price. I think the line that was used is that and again, that line was actually used in this past weekend's paper, not everybody can afford to move into Tiffany Towers, and they need affordable housing. So this hopefully will provide that for these residents. We love to see our seniors in Mount Pearl stay in Mount Pearl if they can, if that's their choice. They get used to shopping, grocery shopping, banking. These are the kinds of routines that are extremely important to aging adults in our community. So we hope that we can keep them there. We have a responsibility to make best use of the land that's available because it is limited, and we need to make sure that we make best use of it. And I believe this will be an appropriate use of the land to maximize benefit for the housing. And maybe at some point in time, some of the people who actually live in the neighborhood will see this as a viable option for investment as a residential housing as well. I know there are concerns, and whenever there are concerns, council obviously listens to them and goes to the public consultation. Unfortunately, I was in Labrador when we had the public hearing, and I missed it. I did go through the concerns that were raised in great detail, and not all of the concerns raised were related specifically to this project. They were related to a number of different concerns. But I believe it's a good use. It may, in fact, be the best possible use for that piece of land. I would be interested, as will all members of council, to seeing what the next level of scrutiny provides for us. And let's move forward from here.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Walsh. Just a question or two before I allow you to close debate, Councillor Aker. The item number 3 in the recommendation, council approved proceeding with a sanitary and storm sewer review and study for the older areas of Mount Pearl, which includes this area. Is it possible that a review of the storm sewer and sanitary sewer system specific to that area be undertaken at the same time that this project, if the development gets approved, is going ahead? I'm concerned that I'm concerned that the statement as it's put in your recommendation is very broad. It talks about we're going to proceed with a sanitary and storm sewer review and study for the older areas of Mount Pearl. It's fairly broad, and that would lead me to believe that that could go on for much longer than, you know what I'm saying? I'm not 100% sure. Is there a way to break? I know what you're intending. I'm not sure that the wording gets that intent out.
It's a very good point, Your Worship, because we wouldn't want this development ready to be launched in, next summer, and we're still studying the bowels of the city as it goes down towards the Waterford River.
You've captured my point exactly.
Yes. So with that in mind, I think the suggestion could be, and I'll ask the Director of Engineering, maybe the committee can look at it afterwards, but can we do a phase 1 and a phase 2 of that study, or can we say, let's do this Riverview-Winston Park area first?
But it's priority 1,
and get an initial feeling for it, Your Worship, as well as a draft report before the rest of the piece is done?
Mr. Randall?
Yes, Your Worship, it could be done. We could focus the energy of the study in those areas. We plan right now with engineering to develop an RFP to begin the process of getting a consultant to do that study, and we could focus that in that area.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the design charrette is good. So what we're approving today, just so that we're all clear on everything, what we're approving today is the actual rezoning of the land. The development that Carwood proposes to put on the land has not yet been, actually, not officially been seen by council, or I'm assuming by the planning committee, and has not been approved by anybody. I know there's 2 buildings, I know how they intend to do it. But the layout, everything from privacy fencing to a pathway, none of that has been put in place, correct?
Zoning and designation under the municipal plan.
Under the Urban and Rural Planning Act.
Concept provided by the developer.
Okay, my last question for you then, okay, and this is to you and the planner as well. Yeah. We're going to zone this, it says apartment. In reading all the reports, the fear that people had, and council did a very good job today, most of you, when you addressed this issue, of trying to assure residents that an actual fact, this wouldn't be an apartment building with tenants coming and going. This was going to be a condo, and primarily focused on seniors. This was going to be owner-owned buildings. Is there a way we can assure that? Is there a way that we can ensure that? Is there something that can be done under our act and under our designation that says we can't have the developer build 48 apartments, he sells 8, and he comes to us and says, guys, this didn't work out, I'm renting them out. Is there a way we can protect against that legally? I don't know.
I don't think legally we can protect against whether there's a seniors.
Not a senior, not a seniors
that would
designation.
have
I understand we can't do that.
That would have some human rights issues.
I'm thinking in terms of classification of property. If can a property like that, for example, be approved for a condo development but not for an apartment building? Is that possible?
I would suggest.
Would that give any comfort?
Your Worship, and the director I know will correct me if I'm wrong. We could make a condition of the development. Now, this is down the road after the zoning gets taken care of.
I appreciate that, yeah.
When there's a permit issued for the development of the buildings, one of the conditions, the initial conditions will be that the charter and the declaration of a condominium corporation has been done and has been registered with the province of Newfoundland and Labrador to ensure.
And that would be required. That would be a requirement for the approval.
We could make that a condition.
Is that possible? I don't know, Mr. Yevchek?
Excuse me. I don't know if it's possible, Your Worship. It's something we have to take a look at. Just to put, I guess, everything in context, an apartment building is a type of residential structure, as is a row dwelling, as is a single-family dwelling, as is a double dwelling.
Yes.
Condominium is a form of ownership. As is rental is a form of type of ownership, as is private property. So, question of ownership is really something that we'd have to check with our solicitors. Do we have control over that or not? Certainly the application by the developer and all the discussions that we've had up to the present has clearly indicated that this is a condominium project, condominium apartment proposal. The benefit of that is that the developers, and this is what's happening in the whole region, is that a lot of developers like the idea of condominium ownership because they are involved in developing a product that is very marketable to a number of people, that over time those people take over the ownership of the project and the developer then leaves, right? So there's a real opportunity for a developer to create a good product that people actually buy into, and then they take over, and the developer then moves on to the next project.
I appreciate that, and for me, and I think council would agree, Mr. Yevchek, that issues of ownership, given some of the experiences we have with rentals, not as a housing style or design, but as an ownership structure, that's where we seem to encounter our most problems. And given that it's moving into a much older, settled area of the city, you're dealing with long-term residents, the prayer of my petition is only this, right? Is there some mechanism available to us that would afford some legal comfort to the people in the area that, you know, your neighbor next door is not 48 transient apartments that are moving in for 8 months and they're gone, and it's not going to be a building that ends up being in a deteriorated or dilapidated state 3 years from now. That there's a everybody, I think, will accept that a condominium process works beautifully. Is there a mechanism through the development process after we change this that could happen? That's about the only thing I'm. Is there another assurance? I'm quite confident of what what Carwood Development intends to build here. By the way, don't get me wrong. I'm just trying to give some comfort to residents that they know that's what he's building there.
Well, I guess my first comment in response again is that I think we should check with our solicitor to see indeed what kind of legal authority we have in terms of that aspect. But this is something that we deal with, just as Councillor Aker, I think, mentioned a few minutes ago, in the development review stage. Mm-hmm. And if there's anywhere where we can attach that kind of situation to, it would be in a development permit as a condition of the development permit.
And that's kind of where we'd have to go down that road. But
right
again,
now,
we haven't seen a development. There's going to be another public hearing. There's all kinds of things to happen.
At this point, we're dealing with just trying to change the designation and zoning so that council can then go to after the public hearing, if it goes forward, so that council then has the framework in which they can actually consider the actual development application and those kind of issues. But in the interim, what I would suggest to council and what we could do as a department is meet with our solicitor, get an opinion, and bring it back to council.
I'd like to hear one. I'd like to hear one, and just before. All right, just before we close debate, if I open up to you, John, I got to open up to everyone. Okay. Everybody happy with that? Carry on.
Well, the only thing I want to say, and no one can provide that 100% measure of assurance, and I think that the director's comments, and I know the committee will take it back for further review. Look, these projects are always driven by demand. You know, what Mr. Hussey is a developer, Carwood, he has these seniors' homes in other locations
Oh,
and
yeah.
other
The
municipalities.
demand is out there. There's no
The
question.
demand is what's going to drive this. I don't think someone in reference to human rights or violations of human rights. Look, people could actually challenge Kenny's Pond's right outside of assisted living to actually challenge ownership of any of these properties. The bottom line is, what does a 30-year-old single person or married couple want to do living in a building surrounded by aging adults or seniors? The demand is there. That's what will settle this issue. The demand is there for condos, and condos, of course, provide continuous ownership, upkeep, maintenance, and the condo boards themselves, they decide some of the rules. There are also, by the way, full streets and neighborhoods in East End of St. John's, off Paddy Dobbin Drive and other areas, where they also market their streets as condo, they're duplex housing,
Condo
units. And again, it's the market that drives it, and I don't think it'll be an issue. I don't think we can actually prevent someone, if they challenge it, from trying to take ownership of a unit if it was a unit for sale. But I don't think you'd ever see that happen.
A unit for sale, then you're already there.
Yeah.
Okay. You ready to close debate?
Unless there's other...
No.
I'm ready to close debate. And I want to thank council as well as the residents for their support from council and the feedback from the residents. I think we've engaged in a good process so far, and there's more hoops to go through here. In closing the debate, though, I want to point out that there's differing views of this development or this property. I don't mean the development itself. Some of the neighbors want no development. They like the field that's there. Other neighbors hate it. They think it's an eyesore. We almost lost the water then. And they also hate the fact that the uncertainty of what's ever going to go next door to them, right? Others want lower density development. I know when we looked upon it as council, hoping that the school board would eventually sell the site, I never dreamed there would be an apartment building there. To me, it was maybe you might see a small cul-de-sac with a few lots, you know what I mean? But this is not like going to Walmart and saying, in aisle number 2, I'm going to have a garage. Can we get that proposal on the table? And go to aisle 3 and get condos, and aisle 4, go get an office building. These are, as Councillor Walsh pointed out, these are demand-driven. And we have a developer who's willing to spend $10 to $15 million because the demand is there. And it'll meet our growing seniors population here in the city, and it's going to add much-needed supply to affordable housing. Basically, some of the other comments that we have taken into account, I think we've tried to look at the issues in 2 ways. There was no NIMBY here. I never got that sense ever from the residents, that they just didn't want it because it's their backyard. We've mitigated many of the issues. For example, this zoning that we're proposing could be for a 6-story building. I think it's the will of council in our discussions to date. We're only looking at a proposal for 3. We're not going above 3. So we could have been a lot worse. It could have been a lot higher. But I think we're pretty well settled on 3 going forward, right? Look at the other uses in the site. You might have had a proposal to be consistent with the warehouses down in Riverview, or with the office building up at the corner of Riverview and Park. But we've got a proposal before us for basically the increase in housing supply, and it'll be owned by seniors, which is good demographically. It'll also be owner-occupied, which is good, I think, for the fit in the neighborhood. This is not the perfect proposal, but given all the variables, it's probably the best proposal and represents a reasonable use of the land. When we look as councillors, as civic leaders, we look at a whole bunch of competing uses. We're put in the spot where we have to make the hard decision. We have to pick which direction to go in, and I think we've helped to mitigate some of the issues, meet demand, as well as to meet the issues that the developer, or the goals and objectives of the developer. The new neighbors here will be senior citizens, and in the long run, they'll be a good fit for the city. There will be a negative impact during construction. There always is. You'll have basically a construction site here probably for a year or 2, if this makes it through the next level. And going forward, doing the design charrette, I think, is a great idea, and I appreciate council's support on this. We need to be proactive with the redevelopment down here, not reactive. And on that note, Your Worship, I'll ask you to call the question.
Okay, everybody has a copy of the motion in front of them. This is basically dealing specifically with the rezoning of this land itself right now, the adoption of Municipal Plan Amendment number 3. and a change to the development regulations to accommodate that amendment number 8, along with the scheduling of the public hearing and the appointment of Mr. Boone as commissioner, as well as the approval of the design charrette moving ahead for Riverview Avenue and proceeding with the sanitary and storm sewer review, making this area priority 1 in that study. That is the motion as I understand it, Councillor. It is seconded by Councillor Ledwell. Call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded, the motion is carried. I thank Council for that. Mr. Aker, the floor is still yours.
Thank you. The next item, Your Worship, is the, item number 2, which has to do with heavyweight fitness. Asks for the permission of Council to defer that. There's more information coming in our private meeting or committee of the whole shortly. So if we could defer that for 2 weeks, it would be greatly appreciated. Item number 3, there is the proposed family child care operation at 11 Fleet Street. And basically, at that location, there's a bit of a history here. In the past, we've seen respite care in this particular house, which is no longer ongoing. We've also have foster care occurring in this house, which is an approved family use within this particular area of zoning. And what the applicant is requesting is whether they can operate a daycare facility here, which would allow for as many as 6 children to be hosted on a daily basis in a daycare setting. The issues in this neighborhood, I think, are long known by Council. We've had a lot of complaints over the years on the street, not just related to this property. It's very congested. There seems to be a high ratio of vehicles to houses here. We've had numerous complaints over the years. We've also had some general complaints with regards to the operation of either the respite care or of the foster care in the house. And based on some Council used its discretion here to ask the neighbors how they felt about this proposal, and essentially all the feedback that came back was entirely negative. And given the level of congestion that's already over there, the committee is recommending we refuse the application, and I so move.
Move, seconded. Question or comment, Council?
I'll make a comment, Your Worship.
Councillor Stoyles.
Your Worship, when Emily Wood was developed, it was known to be, I guess, a higher end, larger lots, and we put a zoning in for that, and I understand there was going to be no apartments over there and no businesses. Since then, I know in some areas, because I think Emily Wood was built in 3 different sections, and in some sections we sort of let businesses, especially law offices and chartered accountants, work out their home when they applied for applications, and it was sort of come look and we see, check with the neighbours and see what the neighbourhood wanted and things like this. I, for one, would normally support a childcare operation. I myself had a childcare operation, had a licensed business in my home back in the 70s and 80s, so something that I would normally support. But this neighbourhood certainly has had a lot of problems in the neighbourhood. The street the parking has been changed just this past summer to one side because there was a large number of traffic on the street, and when our municipal staff went up and looked and they checked the width of the street, they felt that the concern was legitimate and they only allowed parking on one side. One of the things I like for the planner to explain is the different zones in Emily Wood. I understand for sure it's 2 and maybe 3 zones over there. Can you give us a brief description on 1 or 2 of the zones over there, especially in this neighbourhood, because I just want the neighbours and the residents to know, why they moved there and when they got bigger lots, why they paid as one of the residents said to me, well, we pay higher taxes, so we moved into the neighbourhood because we wanted to have a bigger lot and be able to have more freedom in our backyards.
You're testing my memory, Councillor.
Testing your memory.
Yeah.
The map may help you. Check. There's some letters there, RSU1, ING, that may just trigger some.
Yes, it actually has. Thank you.
I was going to make you do it, and I was going to make you do it and not look.
Well, no, it was coming to me very quickly. Oh, thank you.
I'm sure you know it all.
All joking aside, Your Worship, and to Councillor Stoyles' question, originally when the area was, the concept plan for the Admiralty Woods area, and it was all part of the federal provincial land assembly. It was back in the days of CMHC and NLHC partnership in developing lands in this part of Mount Pearl. The concept originally, before I got to the zoning, was really to have one area that was low density, large lot development in a portion of Mount Pearl. And then you went to the next neighborhood, which is now Admiralty Wood. You go to the next neighborhood, which is Westminster, and the density, lot sizes were smaller. Density was just slightly higher, still low density. And then you go to the next neighborhood, which is Pearlgate East, which is next to, of course, Pearlgate Center. And Pearlgate East was, again, smaller lots, again, a bit higher density. But the idea was a transition from this low-density area across Old Placentia Road towards the Pearlgate Center, which was meant to be the hub of a commercial area of Mount Pearl. And at the time, it would have also extended over the Pittsburgh Memorial Drive to the area of the Southlands. So that was the concept, the planning concept. The zoning that was put in place initially was to allow single-family dwellings only. A very exclusive zoning, just related to the homes, not allow any subsidiary apartments, not allow any kind of commercial uses in the area. As time went by and we started getting to the next phases of development, things had changed. The concept for exclusive zoning has changed. Certainly modern day zoning, it's much more inclusive. You hear the concept of mixed development, so you combine uses. You combine the concept of maybe introducing a series of home-based businesses that can actually occur in a dwelling, that do not create traffic, that are not visible, there's no storage, and create a bit more vitality and economic opportunity within the residential area without attracting those commercial traffic and so on. That came into vogue as well. So as council was looking at this, the council decided, as the stages of Admiralty Wood began to develop, to change some of the zoning to accommodate those kind of approaches. Still maintain that high degree of standard, large lot size, but really allow some limited amount of uses. As time also went by, and I think, Your Worship, you were probably you were on council at the time as a young buck, as a councillor.
That was an old buck.
A young buck. It's been a long time since I heard that.
These were times when the whole issue of child care, where should I'll go back, yeah. Where should child care be located? And there was a move, if you recall, Your Worship, to have child care uses within residential neighborhoods, not the group child care for sure, but certainly those child care uses which the provincial department licensed up to 6 children. The drop-off, pickup should be minimal. Be very little change to the home, and it would be basically people that are at home, most likely mothers, maybe perhaps at-home fathers, perhaps, that could take care of a number of children. And so the council changed the zoning to permit those actually throughout the whole city, whether it was the RLD zone, which is our most exclusive zone, to RHD or apartment, either one which is town apartment. We allow those kind of uses. So that's how the change has occurred in the area. So in Admiralty, what we do have 3 types of zonings. One is the RLD, which was the first zoning that's much more exclusive. Second is RSU 1, which is exclusive, but allows a few more uses. And then we have one on the far side of Admiralty Wood, which is actually adjacent to Westminster, which actually was rezoned through a public hearing commission. Actually, commissioner recommended change in zoning to allow a few more uses there because it was abutting Westminster, which was a higher density use. So I hope I know I'm going on, but I'm trying to give you the background and all that. Councillor Stoyles, is that a good enough response?
Yes, it is, Your Worship. Your Worship. Your Worship. Yes, it is. No, I just wanted to.
You can be your worship since I'm a buck now.
Yeah. I just wanted, to highlight why it was done and the reasons why it was done, because I can remember. I mean, where I live, we were part of Metro Board, and of course, Metro Board owned all that lands then, and then of course the city took us over back in the late '87. I think is when my street became part of the city, and then of course the city had taken over all the lands from in Southlands and in Westminster and that. So I just wanted to highlight it and let the public know why it was done. And when people bought over in that areas, they bought because they had bigger lots and things like that. So I just wanted to highlight that to the people. And of course, as I said, I did operate a daycare back in the 70s and 80s. But when a neighbourhood don't want it, we can't support it. So I will be supporting the motion.
Anybody else with a comment? Councillor Ledwell?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to stand up and address the issue, I guess. In terms of our deliberations in committee, what it really boiled down to was the actual situation on Fleet Street and in the neighbourhood itself. Council will certainly recall, and I think Councillor Stoyles and Councillor Aker have certainly referenced it, in that we had some complaints, some concerns that were raised in the area of Fleet Street in terms of parking, to the point where we had our engineering services staff go out and measure the street and decide that we could not allow safely parking on both sides of the street. And certainly, the residents were certainly very vocal in that particular situation, in that particular discussion. And certainly, there was more concerns that were expressed after the fact. But in putting no parking on one side of the street because of traffic congestion and parking problems, certainly when it came down to it in committee, at least I personally couldn't simply support anything that would create more parking trouble and more concerns in the area. So that's why I'm pleased to second this motion this evening.
Anyone else before Councillor Aker?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, no, I fully agree with, I guess, my colleagues, Councillor Stoyles and Councillor Ledwell have hit the nail on the head. We never like to turn down a daycare operation. That just seems to be such a great thing to have in this city for our employed people. But on the other hand, it has to be a good fit, as Councillor Ledwell is talking about, right? It has to fit with the neighbourhood. It can't create congestion and undue inconvenience for the other neighbours that are there. I just don't think this is a good fit. I think the neighbours got it right in terms of their feedback. I appreciate their feedback, and reluctantly we have to turn this down. Thank you.
Anybody else with a comment? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favour? Aye. Contrary-minded, motion is carried.
The next two more items, Your Worship. Development permit list for November 13th to the 23rd. We have permits 76 through 80, and I so move.
Moved, seconded, all in favour? Aye. Contrary-minded, motion carried.
For the period November 9th to the 23rd, we have residential permits for the period. They are $889,800. By the way, bringing the year-to-date total to $32 million. That's not a bad year. And I move those permits, Your Worship.
Moved, seconded, all in favour? Contrary-minded, motion carried.
Permits, same period, building, construction, commercial. We have, total for the period, we have $606,000, and I so move.
Moved, seconded, all in favour? Contrary-minded, motion carried.
Surprisingly this year, notice this, the residential is outpacing the commercial, right? But neither one. Well, the residential's coming close to public works. I have nothing further to move, though. Thank you.
That concludes planning.
Yes, sir.
We'll go back then to the beginning of the agenda, and we'll go to the Public Works Committee. Councillor Walsh, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I'll be brief. We've expended a fair amount of time on the planning report there, as we needed to. Back in 2005, we actually, for the first time, introduced a recycling program in Mount Pearl. We expanded that to include plastics, and of course we do the metals as part of our bulk garbage collection. One of the things that we have observed since we implemented the new cart system, Your Worship, and I guess part of the reason for it may not be primarily because of a conscientious effort to increase recycling, but it may be a bit of a byproduct of having the carts. The carts do have a limited volume. They can take several bags, up to 5 or 6 bags of garbage, actually. What we're seeing for the last 2 months, since we've implemented the citywide circulation of the carts and that system, is in the first month we had an increase in diversion of 0.6%, and then another 1 full percent increase in diversion in the last month. So 1.6% increase. Normally, your best diversion and the highest degree of cooperation from residents for recycling happens to be in the summertime, and I guess that's sort of understandable to a certain degree. So that's a good news story that I wanted to share, because one of the things that we were asked the last meeting, and I'll answer that question now as well, was, how are we doing with diversion? What is the rate of diversion, and what's the volume that we're actually sending to Robin Hood Bay? The answer to that is we send about 6,000 tons per year to Robin Hood Bay. And we will have about 1,000 tons in terms of recyclable materials. And we fluctuate from, 10, 11, up to 16, 17% on a monthly rate of diversion. So we're doing reasonably well. But I just wanted to particularly point out that the addition of the new cart system did not actually create a drop. In fact,
it was what I feared.
Yeah, the opposite effect has occurred.
That's good.
We've actually
That's
increased
really
a little bit, and that's good news.
That
With
really
that,
is.
Your Worship, there's no motion required. I just wanted to provide that information and answer the question from the last meeting, and I thank you for the opportunity to do that.
Thank you, sir, for that. Moving to Community Services Committee, Councillor Tessier.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I too will be brief. First item, Santa Claus is coming to town.
Yay.
Yep.
Is he bringing us any gifties?
Well, have you been a good boy?
I try to be.
All right. The Mount Pearl Lions Club Santa Claus Parade is happening on Saturday, December 1st. It starts at 10 o'clock at Mount Pearl Intermediate.
Who's walking this year? Who's walking?
Sure.
I will not be here, regretfully.
That's right. You were the only one who actually did walk last year. Now we all got to walk this year. Kind of shame. Is that it?
Regretfully, I will not be here.
They've
I'll be
built
out
a
of
lovely
town.
float for us to ride on, though.
Yes. Hop on and hop
And now
off.
they've built it so you can jump on, jump off.
That's good.
Now we all have to walk now, yeah. Yeah. Good stuff.
Okay, so the parade is starting at Mount Pearl Intermediate School. It's going from that school down Ruth Avenue and Park Avenue, and it's finishing at Mount Pearl Square on Topsail Road. So if anybody wants to enter a float or have or would require any further information, they're certainly welcome to call Gerald Coombs with the Mount Pearl Lions Club at 368-6186. And I'm sure, as always, we're going to get a stellar turnout from the residents of Mount Pearl, and certainly we have people that come from different parts of the region as well into our glorious city to watch the parade. So we'll be very happy to see as many people as possible on Saturday.
One of the things that we get to do, Councillor, this year, we usually have done it in November, but because of schedules, this year at the end of the parade, I'm inviting council to join us for lunch. I'm going to be hosting a lunch with our male and female youth of the year and their parents, and council obviously feel free to come join us. I think it was nice. We did it 2 years now. This will be number 3, so this will be good.
It's a wonderful event, actually. And it's a good way for council to get to know the male and female youth of the year on a more intimate
And they'll be,
level as well.
and just so you know, they'll be walking.
They'll be walking.
Yeah, so
yes, they will.
I guess we're doing it whether we like it or not, Andrew. I kind of liked having the ride, though. Young bucks are going to walk there, Stefan.
Let's get this back on the rails. Let's get this back on the rails, shall we? On Saturday, December 1st as well at 6:30 at Mount Pearl City Hall, we're going to be having the City of Mount Pearl annual Christmas tree lighting ceremony. So we're welcoming, of course, all members of the general public to come out and celebrate. Mary Queen of the World Elementary School Choir is going to be there. The O'Donnell Senior High School Choir is going to be there. They're going to lead us all, of course, in our favorite Christmas carols. There's going to be hot chocolate and cookies, which are always very, very popular, especially in the evening. And
Not able to turn that down.
No, and we're going to encourage everybody, of course, to dress warmly so that they can come and partake in the entire celebration. And if anybody requires any more information, they can contact the Community Services Department here at City Hall.
You know, our living tree is getting better.
Yes, we have a living
It's taken
tree.
time. It's taken time. You got to have the patience of Job, but that
But you
sucker
know
is
what?
starting to fill out. I got to say,
But it's
right?
but you know what that living tree is like? It's like watching your own child grow. You don't really see the growth.
No.
But the people who look at it
Yeah.
periodically go,
say,
this
wow,
works.
is that
Look
ever
what's
growing?
happened.
Yeah. It's coming, it's coming.
You know what will be a good indicator on that? The number of lights it takes. How many packages of lights did it take last year? How many packages of lights will it take this year?
2. And 4 years ago, it took 1. It was a very tiny tree. I'm lying.
And like a child, it can be grounded. Oh, I'm going to
Tell us about the Marlins, will you?
leave that alone. The Mount Pearl Marlins are at it again, of course. They had a fall classic that was held at the Aqua Arena on the weekend of November 9th. There were clubs there from all across the province. Our Marlins placed second overall with an average points per entry of 15. Of course, they had lots of great swims, achievements in provincial championship races. Club records are broken and winning 4 individual distance awards. And what amazes me about this is that all of these times continue to be broken. We say it all the time. It's brought forward publicly all the time. These kids are breaking their own records, so I don't know what they're eating, but they're doing a great job. And we want to congratulate all the swimmers and wish them luck, of course, because there's a competition in Carbonear. I believe it's this weekend. I'm not quite sure. And in Pointe Claire, Quebec in December. And that's just for the information of the general public. And finally, the Mount Pearl Soccer Association concluded their 40th anniversary celebrations with a gala dinner and an announcement of $40,000 scholarship from MUN Insurance. I believe that's $20,000 for a female. It's broken down 4,000. Yes, that's right. That's right. That's right. So it's broken down accordingly with male and female athletes, soccer athletes. They've really had a stellar year with a lot of things to celebrate. We got an opportunity to reflect back, I know through slideshow presentations and certainly at different gatherings that they've had, to see how far soccer in Mount Pearl has come. And of course, that doesn't happen without an incredible team of committed volunteers to run the show. 6 of them were inducted into the Mount Pearl Soccer Hall of Fame recently. Mike Mooney, Dave LeGros, Paul Miller, Walt Maven, Jerry O'Brien, and Andrew Moist. And of course, there was the first lifetime membership was given to a very well-deserving Mr. Ed Moist. We were all there for the event. It was beautiful to see the accolades, to hear the accolades, to hear the history of these people with the Mount Pearl Soccer Association, to see the level of commitment that they have given to that organization is unbelievable. I think somebody said that collectively between them there was over 200 years of volunteer service between those people that were inducted into the Soccer Hall of Fame. So we want to congratulate Mount Pearl Minor Soccer on 40 years of exceptional service to the city of Mount Pearl, and certainly recognizing the gentlemen who were inducted to the Hall of Fame, and certainly Ed Moist as well for his lifetime membership. And that is for the information of council and the public.
Thank you, Councillor. Corporate Services Committee, Deputy Mayor Locke.
Yeah, back to the soccer. I had the chance, the opportunity, Your Worship, to bring greetings on behalf. You and I think Councillor Stoyles were out of town on business, and it was a great night. It was a long night, simply because, well, these people got up and people spoke of them and all their accolades and all their commitments, and then of course every one of the inductees got up and of course they shared stories. So it was a long night, but it was beautiful. It was very nice, and to see, as Councillor Tessier said, about over 200 years of volunteerism. And as I said in my address, Your Worship, that's what makes Mount Pearl Mount Pearl. That's what built this city, and it's the people that give selflessly, and they do it for the betterment of the youth and all residents in the city here. So it was a very nice event. So again, kudos to all those people that were honoured and mentioned that particular evening. On to corporate services, Your Worship. The first item here is a tax deferral from a low-income earner. This, of course, is in accordance with the Council's policy for low-income earners. The roll number is indicated there, and the amount is $510.91, and I move that amount be deferred.
Moved, seconded by Councillor Aker. All in favour? Contrary-minded, motion carried.
The next item, Your Worship, are the invoices for Council approval, and we can see there are 10 listed, and they total $200,434.82, and I move that the amount be accepted as presented.
Moved, seconded. Any question or comment regarding invoices 1 to 10? Hearing none, all those in favour? Contrary-minded, motion carried.
And the last item for me, Your Worship, is an advertising request for the 20th annual Christmas Mount Pearl All-Star Tournament. We're recommending approval of a half a page of advertisement at a cost of $100 in the program, again for the 20th annual Christmas Mount Pearl All-Star Tournament, and I so move.
Moved, seconded. All those in favor? Contrary-minded, motion carried.
And that's it for me, Your Worship. Thank you.
That's it for you. Thank you so much. We're moving to Economic Development, Communication, Tourism. Councillor Stoyles.
I just have one item, Your Worship, and this one is, I don't know if we need a motion on it, or if it's just information only. I will check.
No, I think you need a motion.
Okay. It's the Federation of Canadian Municipalities started off. They've done a number of projects in the past, and they're doing a Caribbean local economic development program. And of course, they sent out feeders to all the municipalities all across the country. And of course, our economic development department submitted their application, and there was 23 other municipalities across Canada selected, and of course the City of Mount Pearl is one of them. Now this is all covered by the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. It's not going to cost the City of Mount Pearl, anybody who goes, if anybody is involved in the city, won't be any cost to the City of Mount Pearl. Sometimes it might be just information on economic development. It could be just one of our staff online or doing, it could be anything. Anyway, we haven't received all the information yet on what it's going to entail, and you know, we now want to send off a request or a letter informing the Federation that we have confirmed that we will participate in this program. Over the past number of years, Your Worship, our department, our city has taken part in a number of Federation, FCM, we call it FCM, projects like this, and this one is no different. It's going to be over a 6-year period, so we're not sure exactly what's expected of us, and of course it will come back to us and we will decide what and if we will take part in, and our department is recommending that the City of Mount Pearl will take part in this, and I so move.
It is moved by Councillor Stoyles, seconded by Councillor Walsh. Question or comment? I recall we sent our city planner to Palestine. They've never gotten over it. Look, you saw what happened there in the last one. So we can't send him anymore, can we?
No.
Unless we send him to Gaza again. All right, that's what you get. That's what you get for young Buck. All those in favor? Contrary-minded, motion is carried. Well, what do you say? We're up to engineering services. Councillor Led will save me, for God's sake.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not sure that I can, but I'll do my best.
Talk about our favorite topic.
Our favorite topic.
And it's not Muskrat, it's multiplex.
Multiplex. Well, of course, the construction of the multiplex continues to proceed on schedule. We are now over a fifth of the way there, so we're very pleased to report that. Of course, so as we enter now into the winter season and the Christmas season, a number of the facilities up there, be they the Glacier, the Reed Centre, as it stands now, are going to be used increasingly, I guess. Certainly, and even after Christmas, we get into the Frosty Festival season here in Mount Pearl. So we just want to advise residents and the general public that the upper parking lot connected to the glacier up there is now open to the public. And of course, plans are being currently arranged with community services and the contractor Marco regarding the traffic flow up in the area of the glacier for the fall and winter season. Just want to remind residents, I guess, that for the next year and a half, 2 years, when you go up on that site, you're effectively entering into a construction site. So just a reminder for our user groups and for the public to be careful, watch for signage, and certainly we'll do our best to provide as much parking up there as possible, but just be conscious of some of the potential issues that might arise up there. Of course, as I mentioned, construction still proceeds as planned. We've got 30 of the 48 geothermal wells that have been drilled. The pool construction is ongoing, and of course the work on the foundation continues to happen. And Your Worship, I'll close the update on the multiplex with some good news on our webcam equipment. I know that there has been some concern voiced on that, but certainly the webcam equipment has now been installed up on the glacier. And what it does is it takes a series of pictures on the site at various times throughout the day, and those pictures are being uploaded currently to the city website. What will happen is once we get further along with the project and we start to be able to see some progress, what our plan is to do is to arrange all these in a video so that the residents will be able to go onto the site and see some real progress happening over the course of the video. Exactly. So it's not a live camera? Not a live camera. Of course, we have some concerns with, potential workplace accidents, and there's certain things you just don't want to catch on camera. But certainly, we're much further along than we were in previous meetings.
Workplace accidents?
We don't have any workplace accidents.
We don't have any accidents.
The potential is there, of course. The potential
However,
is there.
we now have pictures.
We now have
How
pictures.
long did that take? 7 weeks, was it? I think 7 weeks.
Yes.
Well, obviously, our significant speed compared to other municipalities in getting things done is frightening. We're so fast. Next item.
See, I couldn't save you. I said I'd try, but I couldn't.
No, why? You can't do it.
Second item that we have is related to the continued work that we continue to do on the properties down on Forest Avenue. Of course, we recently purchased 29 Forest Avenue, and the engineering staff have gone out and gotten 3 quotes with relation to the demolition of that property. You see the 3 bids there in your kit, and it's the recommendation of the committee that the contract be awarded to the low bidder, which is Tony Perils Excavating, for the bid amount of $6,500 plus HST, and I so move.
Moved, seconded. Question or comment? All those in favor? Contrary minded, motion carried.
Okay, our final item is in relation to Donovan Homes and the request for the release of some of their security.
Yep.
Of course, we've been advised at Engineering Services that Donovan Homes has requested the release of that security in relation to Mount Carson Terrace Phase 4A and 4B. It's been determined by staff that the estimate of the current deficiencies at 4A and 4B can be reduced from $490,000 to $229,000. So the committee was then advised that the city holds 3 letters of credit for Mount Carson Phase 4 in the amounts of $115,938, $140,000, and $234,062. It is the recommendation of the committee that we approve the release of the first 2 letters of credit, and that the third letter of credit be reduced from $234,062 to $229,000, and I so move. No
Moved.
numbers in there.
Seconded. All those in favor? Contrary minded, motion is carried.
And that's it for engineering.
That's engineering. That concludes then all of the committee reports under new business. We started on my left last time. We'll start right this time. Councillor Liddell, we'll keep the floor for a minute. Any new business?
I do have a couple of items, Your Worship. I just wanted to make mention, Councillor Tessier in her report alluded to the Mount Pearl Lions Club in relation to the Santa Claus Parade. And I just, we have so many different volunteer services groups and community clubs that do so much volunteer work in our great city. But I just want to take a moment to publicly thank the Mount Pearl Lions Club for all the work that they have done and continue to do each and every year with relation to the Santa Claus Parade. I know, last week, I know for a fact that 15 or 20 members of the club spent the entire Thursday night packing every individual bag of candy that's going to be given out to the children on that day of the parade. Certainly, later on this week they plan to, to help get the sled ready for Santa, of course, on Saturday, and I know they're going to spend a couple of nights at that. And certainly they're going to be up on Saturday morning bright and early, marshalling the traffic in the area, the schools up there, getting the floats lined up. So, they continue to do that each and every year, and I think certainly some recognition is certainly warranted for them. So I just wanted to publicly thank them for all the good work that they do.
Thank you, sir.
As well, I just wanted to make mention, of course, I did mention this at a previous council meeting, but at St. Peter's Parish this coming Thursday evening, the parish will be celebrating its 30th anniversary as a parish and its 10th anniversary in its relatively new, church building. The Mass will be getting underway at 7 o'clock, and there'll be a reception afterwards, so that's just an FYI for council, and for the public. Certainly a momentous occasion in one of the larger faith communities in our city, and certainly happy to report on it. That's it for me.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess this morning the illusion of a continued tropical climate was shattered when we woke up to some white stuff on the ground. I just want to mention that as far as the city is concerned, we have our night shifts are ready. Equipment is ready. We currently have a smaller contingent, but a foreman on 24/7 now. That will move to about 18 or 20 operators overnight during the course of the winter later on. We're ready to go. I guess the caution is to motorists in particular, just slow down. And this is the time of the year, as the provincial slogan says, snow means slow, and we need to abide by that as well, because winter conditions certainly merit a little extra attention and slower speeds, and hopefully residents will cooperate with that. Yeah, there's a little bit tonight.
I thought we were getting it tomorrow night, Wednesday night.
Tomorrow night, and it may change over, they say.
Yeah. Well, when does it not change over to rain?
I'm done, thank you.
Done. Councillor Stoyles?
Thank you, Your Worship. And actually, I was going to mention the snow, and I guess our parking ban is going to be in effect starting on Saturday. Not parking on the street, just to let residents know that come midnight on Friday night, I guess, that residents are not allowed to park on the street, snow or no snow. We have a bylaw in place that we want residents off the street just in case a snowstorm comes and we're not aware of it or whatever. We've put these laws in place a number of years ago, and this year is no different. So just a reminder, I'm sure we will be doing a lot of PSAs and a lot of information out to the public to let them know that our bylaws are in place for non-parking on the street.
Yep.
The other thing I want to mention, Your Worship, is the Northeast Avalon Joint Council, and they're going to be meeting in Mount Pearl in December, and they've changed the meeting because of the Christmas season. It's going to be the 13th of December, and it's going to be here at City Hall, and they're starting at 7 o'clock because afterwards they have a little Christmas social. So I want to invite all my colleagues here to attend the Joint Council meeting on the 13th.
That's here, right?
It's here at City Hall, and I guess everybody in the region, all the joint councils, all the councils in the region will be, they've already received invitation, and the last meeting was in Bay Bulls, and I know I was out of town, and so was Councillor Ludwell. So I received an email from Sterling Willis, the chair. Of course, we already had planned on having it here, but they had changed the date, so I wanted to highlight that as well. The meeting is going to start at 7, but yeah, so even if you couldn't make the meeting, if you wanted to pop down afterwards around 8:30 or 9 o'clock. Also, Your Worship, I would like for us to send a get well card to Deputy Mayor Shani Duff. Shani has been off sick for the past number of weeks. She's gone through major surgery, and she has been recovering now, and I'd like for us to send her off a letter or a get well card wishing her well in her recovery.
Okay.
And that's it for me, Your Worship.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Your Worship, I just have one item. It's a little tough for me, but one of our youth passed away last week, Becky Courage, and she was buried today. That's why I indicated I may be a little late. They had a beautiful service, however, down at First United Church. Her two parents were just pillars of strength down there, and I know there was other members of council there. Huge turnout, and again, just a tough loss. So I just want to publicly mention that and acknowledge the parents. And they, in their speech, they made reference to the strength of the community, and what made them so strong to get through this was the love and support of everyone in the community in terms of providing meals and mowing their lawn, snow blowing their driveway, just taking care of the regular daily routines, and that made it a great contribution to their plight. Becky was I taught Becky myself in level 1 and level 2. Just a beautiful young girl. Had such a quiet determination. And while she was battling her illness, she was one of these people that just did not want any special recognition. She would come in, she was getting chemo, and she would arrange her chemo treatment so she would come in and wouldn't miss her tests. She wanted all the assignments sent home to her. She did not want to miss any deadlines. She arranged her chemo in grade 11 that she didn't want to miss any school, so she came to school during the daytime and went to the hospital to have her chemo treatments in the nighttime. She's just a remarkable young girl, and again, I just want to publicly announce the loss and extend our deepest sympathies to the family. And that's it for me, Your Worship. Thank you. Oh, one other thing, however, I do want to mention for council that there was a hockey charity game planned for this Friday night at the Glacier, and they spoke with the family, and it will still go ahead. So it's 5:30 at the Glacier. It's a game between some alumni and some teachers. They're going to play, I think, the boys hockey team in a game of ice hockey. So I encourage anyone, if you're able, to come out and support this cause. And that's it from me, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Tessier.
Same thing. I just wanted to acknowledge Guy and Debbie Courage and their families, their family, Brady and Jessica, for what they're going through right now. I know at the funeral home yesterday, they were, as the Deputy Mayor said, pillars of strength. In fact, they seemed to be holding everybody else up. And I know when I asked Deb, Becky's mom, I said, "How you doing it?" She said, "Well, what choice do we have? We watched our daughter suffer." So they're a remarkable family. And the Deputy Mayor is absolutely right. Becky, my understanding is that she not only did all of her schoolwork, but she did it very, very well. Her marks were high, very high, in fact, enviable. So anyway, they have been remarkable people, great volunteers in the community. Their children, I have no doubt, will grow up to be tremendous contributors in Mount Pearl as well, because they're just that kind of family. So again, my condolences as well to the Courage family.
Councillor Aker.
Yeah, I want to echo what the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Tessier said. The funeral was a celebration of Becky Courage's life, and if any family epitomized what Mount Pearl is all about, the sense of community, the sense of volunteerism, it was the Courage family. So tonight we're thinking about Becky, we're thinking about Guy and Deb, and Jessica and Brady, and to show you what type of guy, pardon the pun, what type of guy Guy is. The Deputy Mayor referenced the hockey game. Of course, the senior high team, there's this hockey team. They're going to play, I think, a combination, you said, Deputy Mayor, of the teachers and last year's senior team that graduated, and Guy Courage is going to coach. So our hats off to them as we celebrate Becky's life. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. You joined with Council, obviously, and I think we will send off the appropriate condolence from the city. In recognition that these are tremendous community volunteers, appreciated by the community, and the loss of their daughter is felt by us all. I have no other new business at this point in time other than to entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Ledwell. We stand adjourned. Thank you, Council.